What are the most important things that need to be considered when designing?
Okay, well, one of the things I reckon is that you collect the data that you need, obviously, and you don't collect too much data.
Often forms have many more questions that actually end up in an analysis. It's very easy to create the list of nice-to-haves.
There's a tendency for a lot of researchers to think, oh, well, I'll collect that just in case. But then they end up with masses of data that they never actually use. But more importantly, the quality of the data will go down because the respondent is likely to get sort of fed up. That's the question. The interview lasts, goes on for hours. They're just going to say anything to get rid of you.
We always say we should have an analysis plan before you implement the survey. For a number of reasons, that you just don't go trolling for relationships among a large pool of data. You're going to find something interesting just by chance anyway.
So just collect the data that you need and nothing else.
I always think simply about asking the right people, the right questions, the right time. That's a very simple sentence to put together, but actually to do that well for a large multi-topic survey is non-trivial, but it fundamentally comes down to asking the right people the right questions at the right time.
The translation, you'll probably be possibly working in different countries with different languages.
Typically, unfortunately, forms are composed in English, don't have to be, but one of the great things about these digital forms is on the fly, you can change them to multiple languages. So you can have any number of languages within a form and move between them during an interview.
As much as possible, translate the questionnaire and then do a back translation so that you can see that you haven't lost the original meaning of the questions.
What I often find is, what happens is it gets translated and we find somebody has done sort of a desk-based translation. How you would write the question is often quite different to how you would speak the question, in a face-to-face interview.
Is there anything particularly important that is often overlooked in your experience?
One thing is the unique identifier. You must have a unique identifier, which could be a combination of different fields. So it could be like the region ID, the household ID, and at different levels. You have to have a unique identifier at different levels, because if you've got a household questionnaire and you've got some questions that you're asking to individuals in the household, you must have a way of identifying each individual. So you have to have the unique identifier. That's very important.
So once you've moved to digital, do your key considerations of form creation change in any way?
The ones I already mentioned, no. Those are media, paper or whatever application, independent. What you can do with a digital form is provide support to the enumerator. Any of you who have either tried to write an enumeration manual or use an enumeration manual will probably know these are the most least used items on the planet. I like to build any irrelevant parts of what would be an enumeration manual into the form, in two forms. Hints that are displayed. Every time you get that question, there it is in front of you. You're not having to reach to the enumeration manual to look up page 36 to find out what the definition of safe water is. If you need to know that, that will be in front of you every time you ask the question.
One of the things we found is that there are some things that you read out to the interviewee, the respondent, but other things that you don't, other things that are instructions to the interviewer. It would be good to maybe change the font or something. So maybe have a bold for the actual question, the question text as you're going to say it, but any instruction to the enumerator maybe in italics or something. So that sort of thing, it makes it then clear what they need to say, what they need to, and instructions for them, what they need to do.
Does the consideration of layout change when you move to digital?
You still need to think about it in terms of how it's going to look, how it's going to appear. Bear in mind that when you're looking at mobile data collection, you've usually got just one question on a screen. You need to make sure that you're clearly specifying what piece of information you're getting. On a paper questionnaire, you might say something like, did you grow maize in the last season? And then the next follow-up question will say, if yes, what was your yield? If you then see that on your screen, you come back to it and say, if yes, what was your yield? What was your yield of what? So you need to make sure that each question, as it appears on the screen, because it's appearing by itself, that it's clear what it is you're looking for there. And like with the roster, what's the relationship? Oh, other. Okay, and then on the next screen it says, please specify. Well, specify what? Specify the relationship. You just got to be clear in the wording of those questions.
Are there situations when you would want to have multiple questions, perhaps, with a bit of scrolling?
Yes. If there's a few questions that are linked together in some way, then putting them all on the screen together makes it easier when you come to data entry. But you don't want to have to scroll up and down too much. It really depends on the size of the device that you have. Let's say you're trying to work out the household composition, and you're saying, well, how many males and females are there of different ages? On a paper questionnaire, you might have a nice little table, so males as one column, females as another column, and the ages down the side. But you can't have a list like that, but you could have different questions saying, okay, we're looking at the females in the household now, how many are in one age group, the next age group, so have all the age groups on one screen. Again, you need to test it out to make sure it looks reasonable and you're not getting lost and you're not missing any of the questions because they're further down the screen and you're not scrolling down to get them. With paper questionnaires, regardless of what the skip pattern is, there will always be somebody who will not follow the skip pattern properly. Or they'll, if it says tick no more than 4, they'll tick 5. So with the digital collection, you can program that in so that they, if they say, yes, I did grow maize, the next question will appear. Or if they didn't grow maize, then it will skip what's the yield of maize. So you'll get answers where you expect answers.
We can check internal validity of a question. In an asset array, if somebody says they have a number of agricultural related assets, and yet in a roster of plots, there are no plots, you can present a warning to the enumerator. Or if you're absolutely sure that contradiction cannot possibly happen, you could actually stop the questionnaire and prevent the person proceeding at all.
And you can check it so that if it says no more than 4 options, then if they start trying to pick a 5th one, it won't let them. So there's all these sort of things that you can program in, which makes it nice because it forces people to follow the skip patterns that you've very carefully created.
The error messages or the constraint messages, when you put in something that's not acceptable, those should also be informative, so that you as a enumerator who makes mistakes then start to learn what those mistakes and the reasons for those mistakes.
I don't think they've changed the way we structure them.
I don't think we ask more complex questions, because I think the questions come down to asking the right questions to the right people at the right time. And I've never seen anybody really being constrained about the complexity of the question. It's normally, that's far too complex a question, not for the medium of enumeration, but for the respondent to reliably answer in all cases. So the types of questions don't change. The rigor of which you can prevent the silly answer with occurring with another answer allows you to question it, if not prevent it.
It's just really enforcing the way that you wanted it to flow in the first place, which is nice, is good.
And of course, the other thing a digital form now allows us to do is use previous information.
Because of being able to bring information from previous responses more easily, it's easier to match things up. I remember a survey many years ago where we had household roster, and each household member had their ID. But then later on, we'd refer to those IDs, and that was a mess because it was done on paper, people got the wrong IDs, and trying to match them up was a bit of a nightmare. Now you can do that sort of thing more easily, because you can just, well, who is this person? And you've got the data there previously. So that sort of thing, pulling the data and pulling the names in as well. So, which is really nice. You can have, if you're talking about a particular person and you've got their name, so you can say, okay, well, let's talk about Fred, for instance, and it pulls in Fred's name, which makes it a lot more personable as well. Whereas on the paper questionnaire, you'd sort of say, okay, we're talking about, who was it? And you have to flip back and go and find the name of the person, and then you might get them muddled. So, you know, it brings them through, and it can put that information in, combine that information with the next question.
If you are identifying people that you know something about, you can present that information. This is a male head of household, his name is X, he is 42 years old, he has 3 children under 12. Checking that you are talking to the right person with all this background information that you got from a listing or from a previous survey just increases the likelihood that you're asking the right person the question. So what are my 3 right questions to the right person at the right time? Checking that right person element, we have scope to do that in a much more informed way. And presenting it right there on the phone. Again, not having to look that up on a piece of paper. Could have looked it up on a piece of paper. Would it have been done easily? Probably not.